Hey everybody, Adam here with Hometown Acres. Welcome back. Pardon my squinting today. It is extremely bright out right now. But what we have on the agenda for today is something that I've needed to do for the last 2 years, and you guys have certainly let me know in the comments, and that is get a roof over top of this sawmill before winter really hits hard. As you can see, there is some snow on the ground right now. We've only gotten probably an inch or two, nothing to really even worry about plowing or snow blowing just yet. But I think later this week they are calling for anywhere from 5 to 6 inches of snow. So before that hits, I want to make sure we get a roof over top of this sawmill. Let me show you what the game plan is. So when it comes to the wood yard down here, all of this equipment, the log splitter, the firewood processor, the sawmill, all of this equipment will last much longer if it's under a roof. The problem is once you put a permanent roof up, now you're kind of fixed with where you can put the equipment, how you can lay it out. It is somewhat limiting for future changes and advancement. And if you guys watch the channel a lot, you know that we are all about process improvement, trying to create as much efficiency as possible. And so when it comes to putting up permanent structures, I have a little bit of a fear of commitment just because we're still new at this. We've only been doing firewood and sawmilling for, well, firewood probably 4 or 5 years and sawmilling only about 2 years. So we still haven't worked out all the bugs that we want to work out to come up with a solid, production assembly line or ways to make firewood and lumber as efficiently as possible. So that's probably the biggest reason why we haven't got a roof over any of this equipment yet, is we're suffering a little bit from analysis paralysis. We're kind of overthinking it, trying to plan out the next 10 to 15 years before we put a structure up, and at the cost of the equipment. It's sitting out here in the weather and it's not doing any good for anybody. But I was talking to neighbor Doug, and he's the creative engineer that comes up with a lot of my problem solving. And he said, well, let's start thinking about a temporary roof for the sawmill. If you don't know that this is where you're going to keep it forever, you don't want to put a permanent roof, a big 20 by 30 building up over top of it. Let's start thinking about a temporary roof for this. So the plan is we are going to fix a roof to the top of the cage for the motor and the saw blade housing and all of that. And that way, if and when we want to move the sawmill, we can literally just pull the roof right off the top of there, move it, and put it back on until we get a little bit more comfortable with all the equipment and figure out what our process flow is going to be. And then we can, the ultimate goal is to put all of this under one roof with a big cement pad, working on flat ground that you can clean easily with a leaf blower and a shovel and all that. That is the ultimate goal. But like I said, right now we're going to go up to the garage and we're going to start working on building a temporary roof for the sawmill for today. All right, so we're back up here in the garage. We got some measurements taken from the sawmill frame so we know what we're building off of. We've got some leftover 2x4 material from the garage build this summer. We've got some leftover white metal roofing, and we even have some leftover screws that match it to go with it. So this project really shouldn't cost us anything but our time with just leftover materials from the garage. That is the nice thing about a big building project like that, is don't throw out your leftover scrap material because you'll be able to use it in a future project. All right, so the dimensions of this roof is going to be 6 foot by 8 foot, and that'll give us plenty of overhang on either side, hopefully, to keep wind, rain, and snow from blowing in from the sides and still getting on that motor, even though we have a roof overhead. So we're gonna go ahead and make our first 2 cuts at 8 feet, which will give us our 2 fascia boards, and then we'll go ahead and cut our studs or trusses, whatever you want to call them, for just a lean-to style roof next. So now that we've got our 6-foot rafters cut, we need to go ahead and cut these bird mouth notches in them because the top of the sawmill frame is flat. And if we don't do anything, we'll just have a flat roof, which, given the scale of this project, really wouldn't be that big of a deal. But we do want snow, ice, and water to drain off them whenever possible. So in order to give us some pitch on the roof, we're going to go ahead and cut 1.5 inches into this board. Obviously, the more you cut into it, the more pitch your truss will have, or your rafter. But then you also have to start worrying about the structural integrity of that rafter. So I think on a 2x4, 1.5 inch bird's mouth notch there is going to be good, but I wanted to show you guys how to do that. Now, I only want about a 112 roof on this, which means that for every 12 feet of run, you have 1 foot of rise or fall. And if you look at the speed square, you've got this common right here. And if you take it and put it flat up against your edge, it says pivot right there on the pivot point. You just want to pivot that until whatever number, so like on a 412 roof, you would mark it right here and you would strike a line. But since we're doing a 112, we're going to pivot this back so that 1 is right on the edge of this board now. So now we've got that line struck. We also want to measure up our 1.5 inches here and mark that. There we go, 1.5 inches. Okay, so now where this mark is here, we're going to go ahead and take our framing square, line that up with that angle mark we just made, like that. And now we're going to go ahead and strike this line from this angle here, perfectly 90 degrees out to the edge of this board. And that's going to be our waist cut there. Now to make this cut, we're going to let the circular saw do most of the work, and then we'll just come back in and trim it up with the jigsaw. All right, so here I got my dad giving me a hand setting this up on there so we can get it marked out for where we need to drill our holes through the 2-inch square tubing on the frame of the sawmill. All right, so we're gonna be going through this 2-inch square tubing with 5/16 4-inch long lag screws. So we've got a 5/16 bit. We're gonna drill through that 2-inch tubing first, and then we're gonna go ahead and put this back on, and then we'll grab a smaller bit to drill into the wood so that we don't split the 2x4s on the other side. Whew, that's an arm workout. There we go, that's one done. All right, so we got it up there, and now you can really see the beauty of those notch cuts that we put in there. And we only did it on the center 3 because those are the only 3 that we're gonna be resting on the frame. The 2 on the outside are not. But you can see it just gives it ever so slight of a pitch. So that way rain, ice, water, snow, all that stuff will drain off of that roof. All right, so now we've got the roof back on, and we're gonna go ahead and drill our pilot holes through the 2x4s. So this is a smaller bit. It's still gonna give us plenty of bite, but this is just gonna prevent us from splitting the 2x4s as we put our lag screws up through. So we've got a lag screw and a washer. So here is the finished product. We ended up getting 6 lag screws in here to secure the roof to the frame of the mill. We've got 3 lag screws on this front piece of 2-inch square tubing, and we've got 3 lag screws on the back. Now those were 4-inch lag screws, so that screw is pretty much halfway up through that 2x4 there. One thing I really like about this roof setup is how much overhang we have over the sides there. Our weather comes from the west over this way, and so the wind will be driving rain and snow trying to get underneath that roof, but that 28-inch overhang is really going to help us out. In addition, the power head obviously travels up and down for normal operation of the sawmill, so when I'm done milling for the night, my plan is to just take that and raise it all the way up and tuck it out underneath that roof as close as I can get it. Another problem this roof style solves for me is access. If I were to have just a regular 4-post pavilion covering the entire thing, I wouldn't be able to use the excavator to load big heavy logs. I've got the tractor, which I can load smaller logs with, but anytime I get, logs like that size there, my tractor won't touch that. And if I had a roof covering the entire track and everything, I wouldn't be able to use the excavator because the boom would be hitting the roof as I was trying to load it. So this setup here will still allow me to use the excavator to pick up big heavy logs, pick them up, swing them over and set them on the mill. And even if I need to grab it in the middle and slide that log in under, I still have 100% full access to use the excavator to load this sawmill. Now, obviously the biggest threat or risk to a roof style like this that is attached to the mill itself and doesn't have posts in the ground is wind, because essentially we just created a giant kite for our sawmill. But if you look, what we have our feet on is these scrap pieces of blocking that we milled, and we actually buried those down into the ground. So the feet are maybe half buried into the ground, so that's going to help hold it, plus the weight of the mill. I mean, all of the steel on this track system, all of the steel on the frame, the engine, again, those are buried about 6 inches down into the ground. And worst case scenario, if we have a really big windstorm coming up, I can always bring the excavator over here and just set the bucket on top of the track, and I think that would keep it planted firmly to the ground. Now, another thing we've got to think about with wind, besides the entire mill getting picked up and tossed around, is the carriage itself. So this sawmill does have a brake on it, so it slides along the rails freely whenever you have the brake released, and whenever you lock it in and hit the brake, now it doesn't move. But if we get a heavy enough wind, you can still, with a little bit of effort, push that. And now that we've got a kite strapped to the top of it, we need to find another way to secure that better in the case of some heavy winds. And I think the best solution for that is a pair of vice grips. Take those and clamp those to the track right in front of the roller. And now, I don't think that's going to roll at all, even if I let go of the brake. Yeah. Between that vice grip and the brake, I don't think this is going anywhere. We actually have a winter storm rolling in here on Friday. We're supposed to have 60-mile-an-hour winds, and neighbor Doug actually texted me and said, hey, you might want to think twice about putting that up now. And I said, well, if we're going to put it up anyway, we might as well find out whether it's going to work with heavy wind or not now, rather than putting it up and waiting until, January, February, March to find out that it's going to fail. So at some point, we got to battle test it, and I guess it's going to be 2 days after we put it up instead of a couple months. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to about wrap this one up. I want to give a huge thank you to neighbor Doug for helping me come up with the design for this roof. It solves a lot of problems for us. I think Doug is officially becoming our design engineer. I can make this stuff, but coming up with the creative solutions that Doug comes up with it really is a gift. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this one, give me a big thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.